Welcome to the Chronic Health Collector Show, where we empower you to transform every area of your life. So, we gathered the best coaches and experts in the world to bring you weekly insights that's going to elevate your physical, your mental, and your spiritual well being. Whether you're looking to boost your energy, heal your relationships, or live a more productive, balanced life, we're here to guide you every step of the way. And on this week's episode, I have my life partner, Minna Wong. And Minna Wong, she is a seasoned business consultant with a focus on optimizing systems and processes for large corporations. She has a keen eye for detail and a strategic approach and has helped numerous organizations streamline their operations and achieve greater efficiency. In addition to her consulting work, Minna is a dedicated life coach focusing on time management and productivity. She partners with clients to help them reach their ultimate productivity and time optimization goals, empowering them to achieve more with less effort and less stress. And Minna's latest entrepreneurial venture is the launch of her new skincare brand, where her mission is to empower busy women to ditch their heavy makeup and embrace their natural beauty. Her brand is dedicated to providing high quality skincare solutions that simplify beauty routines and highlight the true face of every woman. Hey, Minna, how are you?
I'm good, I guess. This is weird for me because I don't do a whole lot of interviews.
Exactly. And this is the first time we're on separate screens too. So this is going to be an interesting interview because for the month of February, we are continuing on the theme of self-love and relationships. And I know you're going to give us a little bit more insight what that all means, right? So why don't we kickstart as a productivity coach? What does true balance really mean to you?
So when we talk about balance, right? The first thing that comes to mind would be something like a seesaw in the playground. We have one side and the other side is supposed to balance, and the seesaw actually doesn't move, right? But most of the time, you don't know what you're balancing. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of people out there that think the balance is on the time, right? So you're spending 8 hours, at work and 8 hours with your family. That's considered balance. If you're spending more than that, then you're spending too much time on one side and not the other. So that's one way of looking at it. It's easy to calculate, but not exactly effective. My way of looking at balance is how satisfied you are with all areas of your life, right? So if you're happy with your work, but you're not happy with your spouse, then that's not balance, right? You actually want to be happy in all areas of your life, right? You want to be healthy, you want to be happy, at home, you want to be, successful at work. So true balance is about balancing all these areas of life and it's based on how you feel, not so much on how much time or how much effort you spend on each area.
That's interesting because, we always talk about, there's only 24 hours a day, right? And talking to a lot of people when they're saying, like you said, they're trying to balance their work-life balance, and they're saying, well, I'm going to put 5 hours here, 8 hours for the work day, 3 hours for the kids. And it's like what you said, it's like in the very beginning, everyone trying to balance this pie chart. What you're saying is you should actually change that up. It's not necessarily trying to plot it all out. It depends on what's actually more important in your life.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's not even about how much time you spend. Like if you have kids, I think a lot of people would say, I want to spend more time with the kids. But when they
Mhm.
actually do, they would start doing, folding laundry or, washing dishes, whatever it is. They're not really spending quality time, right? So it's really the quality of how you spend the time that makes a difference. It's not really just how much time you spend with the kids, right? The kids not going to remember you folding their laundry and doing dishes for them. Your kids is going to remember, how you spend your time with them, right? The same with your spouse, they're not going to remember how you do chores with them, how they wipe the floor with them. It's all about the experience that you spend together, how the quality of time you spend together.
That's amazing because like a lot of people, like you said, they're not present. Basically, the what you're saying is even though they're there, they're not present. They're multitasking. So, what are your thoughts on multitasking then? Because so many people I know is like, I'm so good at multitasking, I can fit it all out. I'm just gonna balance everything else. Like you're talking about that seesaw, I'm gonna have it perfectly balanced on the seesaw because I can multitask.
Well, so multitasking is, here's the way I view it, right? I've done this exercise for you, but we can do it again. So let's start by counting 1 to 10 as fast as
Okay.
you can.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Right. Now count A to J as fast as you can.
A B C D E F G H I J J.
That is very pathetic. But I'll accept it. So when you do count the 1 to 10, it takes like a second, right? When you count A to
Mhm.
J, it takes you 2 seconds. It takes most people 1 second. Okay. So now let's do this. Now do A1, B2, and keep going.
A1, B2, C3, D4, E5, F6, G7, H8, I9, J10.
That's not bad. But what you realize is that when you do that, when you're combining two sequences together, you're taking more time than if you do that each of those things separately. Is that right?
Oh, definitely. I actually have to think about it. And meanwhile, because I'm thinking about that, I can't think of anything else.
Right. So, and it's actually much harder on you, and it's more stressful, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Especially when we're on air.
So here's the thing about multitasking. It's really a myth. It's about people telling you stories that they don't really want to pay attention to you.
Mhm.
Right. So when you're multitasking, you're switching from the A to the one, the B to the two. And when you do that, you're not really focused, right?
Mhm.
You're constantly switching all the time, right? So when you do multitasking, you're actually wasting more time and you're not focused. You're stressing yourself out and you're not really doing what's best for you.
Wow, that's crazy. And I remember we learned that together. And even once in a while, I fall off the wagon because I think I can do it all. Like you said, we're one thing that you're I guess it comes down to your mind's always going to prioritize something, even though that may not be the thing you're prioritizing. Then, correct?
For sure, you're always going to prioritize something, and when you're trying to do multiple things at once, you're constantly shifting your focus, and because of that, you're actually using a lot more brain power than you have to, and you're stressing you out a lot more, and you're really not as effective. So, meaning you're actually spending more time and getting less done.
Hmm. Well, the interesting thing is like you hear about power couples nowadays, right? And for power couples, it's always interesting because everyone's sort of saying, well, I can do the work balance. I'm going to be this powerful figure at work, and regardless if it's your own business or maybe you're working for a company. And how do you think that works out when here you are, you're trying to build your business, you're climbing the corporate ladder? How does that affect everything else? Can you actually have a true life balance?
The way I look at it is, well, first of all, with power couples, um, is this image that comes to mind is like a couple that dress in like cocktail dresses. They go to like these dinner parties, and that's how you look at it. The power couple, you don't actually know what the stories behind, behind all that, right? It's just when they're going out to see people, that's how people look at them. So
Correct,
for
correct.
me, when me and you and as a couple, you are the only thing in the world that actually matters, right? You
Mhm.
are like the center of my universe. I hope you're
Correct.
happy with that and say it out loud. But when you have a spouse, you are the only person that I have to spend the rest of our life with. well, I choose to spend the
Mhm.
rest of my life with you, right? Your career is going to be gone at some point. You're going to retire. Your kids is going to leave you at some point. Your family,
Mhm.
is going to gone at some point. Your even any of your friends, they might leave you at some point. But it's the only thing that you're going to have for the rest of your life or my life is
Mhm.
is your spouse. So I think spouse relationship wise, that is not just a slice of the pie, right? It's really
Mhm.
the whole pie, right? And
Correct.
everything I do, when I'm doing my work, when I'm creating a company, when I'm traveling, it's always I always have you in mind. Is it going to affect you? Can you do it with me? How it's going to impact your workload, right? So all that has to be put into perspective when you're designing your life, I guess.
Correct. Correct. So rather than say like a work-life balance, it's more like a relationship balance where how you can fit everything else to support the relationship then, right?
Yeah, when there was a time that I work a lot, right?
Mhm.
And when we did that, you probably wasn't very happy because now you're stuck with the kids, you're stuck with the housework, and you don't get to see me very often, right? That was
Correct.
probably like 20 years ago that I did that.
Correct.
And even when I was working a lot, it doesn't make me any happier, right?
Mhm.
It just because I feel I have something to prove. I feel like I was a consultant at a time in the tech world, and I'm like the only girl in the men's world basically, which is
Mhm.
most of my life actually. It feel like when I feel like I have a lot to prove, then you tend to spend more time than is expected of you in something, and really the outcome isn't what I wanted. The outcome is just maybe more money, but
Mhm.
I have less time that to spend with you and the kids, and that's not really what I want, right? So realizing that, I changed my life around, right? I just have to change my focus on
Mhm.
really knowing what's important to me.
Correct. Correct. So when you're talking about true life balance, what does that look like? Because we're talking about, you want to balance your relationship, but what does balancing the relationship actually mean? I imagine it's not just spending more time together, right? Because sometimes you can get sick of each other if it's just a matter of spending more time together, right? Well, what does that balance mean to you?
Well, then it's really balancing everything that's important to you. So my
Mhm.
work is important to me, so I do spend a significant amount of time on my work, right? But that still revolve around you being able to work around it, right? So if I am
Mhm.
working too much that I couldn't help you do whatever you need, then that's on me. That's my problem, right?
Mhm.
So for me, you're still one side of the balance where
Right.
I have to schedule my work around you. I schedule my businesses around you. The kids kind of revolve around us, anyways.
Correct.
But it's about hmm, true balancing. I would think is that we have to work together to actually balance all our areas of life, right? So if you're spending too much time on your work, you have to start thinking about what I need in terms of how that impacts your work.
Excuse me. That's interesting what you said, what you need or what I need. What does that mean when it comes down to aligning values? What exactly does the need mean?
There's a lot of aligning that me and you have to do. And I don't
Mhm.
even think we're there yet, but I think we're
Mhm.
better than most couples. So when we are aligning, right, it is about what our end goals are. Like how
Mhm.
much, not just how much money we want to make. That's actually a big part of it, right? The
Correct.
money goals is important, right? The family goals is also important. Where do you want what do you want your family to look like? You know, what do you want your life to look like, right? Health is important to us too, and that needs alignment because a lot of people actually don't pay attention to their health at all. They just work or they play or they drink or whatever it is. So a lot of couple they actually not aligned in their health or their work at all, and that's how
Correct.
they start arguing about a lot of things, right? And that's why me and you we don't argue because we have those values, the important ones aligned.
It's funny exactly you said that. The last person I interviewed, I think it was Vince, she was saying, do you just remember the last time you had an argument with Minna? And I struggled, right? Not because I was pretending, but I was actually struggling trying to remember the last time we argued. Let me ask you this, talking about this whole balance, what type of challenge do you think would be good for our viewers out there that you want to leave them to before we jump into the next segment?
I think it's important to really look at your life and really look at what is important to you and write those things down and see how happy you are in each of those areas, right? If you're truly balanced, you should be actually happy in all those things. You may
Mhm.
not be like the peak performer in your company, but you might be good enough that you makes you happy enough, because like to get to that next level, that is not something you want to give up, because then you have to give a lot of time or a lot of, you know, attention or whatever that is. So when you feel like you're happy in all those areas, that's when you are happy. And
Mhm.
realistically, I don't think there's actually anybody in this world that is completely balanced. There's always
Correct.
something you have to work on. You just have to find
Mhm.
out what you have to work on and just work on that.
I love that. So basically, the stuff that you're happy with, you're probably doing okay in those areas. It's just when the areas that you're not quite happy with, and like you said, both me and you, we're work in progress in that aspect also, because like I think it is hard. So that's where you want to spend a little bit more time on.
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Okay, we're gonna take a quick short break, and then when we come back, we're gonna talk about why the relationship with your partner is so important for work-life balance. We'll be right back.
A life empowered is closer than you think. We're all looking for a better way. Reimagine what's next with a new sense of exuberance. Why not power on like you mean it? Or power off blissfully? A better sleep is a better awake. You've never moved like this before. With the energy nature intended. Imagine reprogramming the way you look at the speed of science. At longevity. At exhilaration. It's next level rejuvenation. Take control of your well-being from the inside out and outside in. The light within is ready to ignite. Be the light. LifeWave.
Welcome to a reimagined world where kids can't wait to go to school, beg for books to read, math is an exciting game, and teachers get to love teaching again. Meet Christy Boyd Johnson. She's been in the trenches and emerged with the keys to making education a fun, free, and inspiring experience. Email her at barefootlearningclub@gmail.com and chat with her one-on-one. Her philosophy? Foundation plus imagination equals genius.
Welcome back to the Chronic Health Collective Show. In the first segment, Minna was dissecting about all the segments of the pie we all live in when it comes down to work-life balance, right? And one of the things that we ended with was how important it was to line up your relationship as the center of your life when it comes to the whole work-life balance. Let's jump right into that. What do you mean exactly? Why is it that important?
So I think it's important because I want this relationship to last. Right? Part of the problem I see with nowadays is that splitting up is too easy. Right?
Hmm.
Divorces are way too easy. It's too common that 50% of what marriages fail because it's actually easier than back in the old days, right?
Correct.
And it's almost as easy as finding a new job nowadays, right?
Mhm. Correct,
So
correct.
if you see your relationship, your marriage as something that is so easy to just you know change or to end it and to find a new one, you're not going to have the same, what do you call it, you're not going to spend as much effort trying to make it work.
Hmm.
And I think you know what, the key is that you have to make it work, like to want to make it work. And to if you want to make it work, then you as my spouse has to be the center of my life, right? Meaning I need you to agree to the job that I'm doing, the work that I'm doing, the travels that I do, the cats that we get, everything. You have to agree to it, right? Otherwise, if we don't agree on a lot of things, then that's not going to work for us.
And just throwing it out there for all the couples that's listening to this, that goes both ways too, right? You need to agree with some of the stuff that I want. I don't want them thinking that's all one-sided.
So I guess now would be if not a bad time to. I'm changing gear a little bit, right? So,
Sure.
we moved to Texas for almost 4 years ago,
4 years ago.
right? And I think a lot of you don't know that I've been wanting to move for a long, long time. And because you don't want to move, that's not something that I can move because I've done it once. I left you in Canada back in the day, and and then you came and catch up to me, right? So how does that make you feel back in the 2000 when we actually separated for like a month?
That is so true because, and I think this is where the problem where a lot of people have with relationships, because I know before we left Canada, we used to live in Canada and we left, like you said, in 2000. Well, you left, let's say, for California, and it was funny because I knew you wanted to leave, you weren't happy in Vancouver, um, and you're putting all these subtle hints, but like you said, there wasn't, in the time in Vancouver, I find that I was really just not there for a relationship. I'll be honest, right? There's just so many things, like you said, so many parts of the pie I'm trying to juggle. And even I love you to death, that part of pie, I wasn't spending the time as I should. And it was really funny because you said, "Oh, this is what I want to do. I'm going to be moving, leaving in January." And all I heard is, "Okay, we'll talk about it." Like that. Remember that? I said, "We'll talk about it." That was in December. And in January, you're like, "Hey, I'm leaving next week." And you left. Right. And it was interesting because that really set me up to sit back and, like you said, it got me thinking of what was important for me, and all the things that I was neglecting, it all came crashing through. And of course, I followed up within a month after you, right? I had to sell the business, I had to close whatever we can, right? But the funny thing is I was really quite miserable in Vancouver. Like, as a business, I was sort of like, yeah, it was great, you're a business owner, you're known for that, but personally wise, I just wasn't very happy. Right. So it was a blessing in disguise. And, I'm sure for a lot of couples out there are a lot of these blessing in disguise. They may feel uncomfortable at first, but, everything had to be readjusted, because remember when you said, when we moved to 2000, you were the one making all the money. I couldn't even work because I didn't even have, papers to work during the time. And yeah, it was quite the adjustment to become a house husband.
Yeah, but it's interesting because you said that you didn't even know that you're miserable in Vancouver.
Exactly.
And there are
Exactly.
actually a lot of people that were in your shoes at the same time. Even now, there are a lot of people that were miserable. They just didn't know that they could actually leave, where they are and be not miserable.
I think what you're saying is very true, because when it comes down to aligning values, like you talk about, right? And I have a lot of friends, we have a lot of family that we left in Vancouver, because, like, I grew up in Vancouver all my life. And it's interesting. We left Canada for 24 years now, and we're just looking at the trajectory from where we were to where we are now, like our lifestyle, how we live, what our values are. Things probably change, I would say 20x. I'm not even going to say 10x, right? 20, 30x. As opposed to, we're still going back once in a while to visit family. And it's almost like going back in time. Nothing's changed for them, right? They're still talking about the same problems. Some of them have children now, their children are growing up, but it's still the same problems they're talking over and over again. And it's funny because me and you would say, oh, you should try this. You have to try it. Oh, we don't have time. That's too expensive. Dude, this is 24 years. Like we're no longer in college, right? If you can't say you can't afford a nice vacation, then there's a problem. You have to start wondering why you can't afford it. Like where's all that time being spent? And are you actually giving time to your significant other rather than trying to hustle and make more money, right?
For sure. So I guess we can actually talk about why we moved to Texas, right? Because I mentioned I wanted to move a long time ago because I'm seeing that I'm not attached to my friends or my work or my house or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not attached to things that were keeping me in California. But it seems like you have doubts, right? Because you said your friends are there, your work is there, and you weren't willing to move at the time, right? But something's changed, didn't it?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people that know us, I'm a major extrovert. You're a major introvert, and you come out of your shell in the last 24 years. But it's funny because, like you said, I like to be around people, and and then like we did make a really good group of friends in California, and during that time we had all your family in California before they started out moving everywhere too, right? So it came to a point that, wow, this is comfortable. We own a house, right? Things seems, we both have pretty steady income. So it was getting pretty steady. But, it's funny because you like you said, you've been wanting to move for the longest time. And I was saying, why? Everything seems pretty good. And once again, things just weren't as good as it can be. And I think that's the biggest problem, right? For me, it's like, how much better can it get? Right. And I was pretty happy. Like it wasn't perfect. Everything was going pretty good until whole COVID hit, and then the shit literally hit the fan. But it's sort of funny what you said is when that happened, is it opened my eyes that yeah, your friends or family is sort of important, but they shouldn't be the reason why you live the life the way you do.
So would it surprise you that us moving to Texas is because you're an extrovert?
Yeah, it was. So
Because then for when COVID hits, right? Everybody's staying at home, so you were really miserable sitting at home and not seeing anybody. Right?
it,
And you
it,
were
it
very
was
annoying. People would like jump away from you in California.
no, that is exactly true, right? And I'm just meeting people, like, during that time, we're hustling a little more too. And I was working as an assistant manager at a gym, like boutique gym, and it was annoying because, when I started, it was before this whole agenda to be 6 feet away from people and wearing masks, and it's like, wow, this just feels like so impersonal, and it just made everything feel so wrong, right? And I was just uncomfortable with that, right? Not uncomfortable that I was gonna get sick, but I was just uncomfortable with, this is not a life that we have choice of, right? And like you said, when we look into Texas, and we, next to everything being cheaper and bigger and everything, people here are crazy friendly, and it's been quite a blessing coming to Texas. And we're still seeing a lot of things that has really opened up our lives, not just for financially, but even as our goals are aligning, things are starting to line back up again, right?
Yeah, it takes some effort, right? to move anywhere. It takes some effort to readjust. And
Hmm.
I guess part of why we move is because we're actually aligned on the health aspect.
Correct.
We don't want to be in California because we don't want to take the vaccines. God, we that's why we left. Like, that is the real
Right.
reason. I don't tell anybody that until
Correct.
I
Correct.
find out. But that is the real reason why we have to leave, because we don't want it. We are leaving, someone that's telling us what we have to do, and that's
Hmm.
when we leave, right? But we are aligned in terms of health. I think that's really important for a couple.
Yeah, and like you said, when it comes down to health, I always tell people the health is your choice. It's your responsibility. And when it comes down to when other authority starts governing what you can or cannot do for your health, like you said, that was a major problem. Like we're rebels to start with, right? We're rebels in our family. We rebels that we left Canada, and then now we're rebels that we left California. And a lot of people say, well, just get the shot. There's so much, it just get it, right? What's the worst that can happen? And it's sort of funny because, like you said, as health and longevity coaches, we do what we believe in, right? We don't just talk it, we do it. And all the research back then was already showing this was, let's just put it nicely, it was untested. That's all I'm gonna say, right? And there was doubts, and all I'm telling people, look, there are doubts. I wouldn't just do everything. It's like you're not gonna just eat a piece of food without knowing what you're eating, what you're putting in your body. There's no difference with the vaccine, and all the warning that you talked about, and sort of like it's sort of funny. You're almost like a seer. You can see things going on. You say, look, this is going to cause bad problems. This is going to cause problems in work. Corporate's going to start laying people off, right? California's going to get into debt and all this stuff. And it was funny because we're telling our friends this is why we're leaving Texas, because like you said, we didn't want to say that we left because of the vaccine during the time. And of course, the vaccine was the major problem why we left, but everything you talked about came into fruition also. So once again, the values we're talking about, look, this is not going to align with our values. It's going to crash, our finances. We may lose our jobs, right? But more importantly, like you said, we're going to lose our health, right?
Yeah, I mean that's where we are really aligned, right? Because we know that you might lose a job, I might lose my job. We are going to lose our friends. We have to make new
Yeah.
friends. So even with all that, the health is important enough for us to make the change, to move, because we're not trees, we can move.
Exactly, and like what you said about the health was so important, because a lot of people say, well, you should be doing this for your family, doing this for that. Well, all I can say is, how's that working for you? Because so far, everyone that we know that was coerced, um, either they're facing, some health issue, or they know someone that has, right? And Minna, how many times have we been sick in these last 4 years?
4 times, maybe
And
four
how
days total.
exactly. And each time we've been out, we're out maybe 1, 2 days each time,
Yeah.
right? And we're going out. We're seeing people. We're everyone knows we're foodies, right? Um, so that really does talk about how important health is as a couple. So what do you think? Why is health so important as we're getting older, Minna?
Well, the older we get, a lot of people thinks when you get older you're supposed to get sick. I think that is not true, right? And
Hmm.
the the more the easier it is that you get sick, the more it's going to impact your relationship, right? And it's not just with your spouse, it's with your kids. I watched, growing up with my mom. She's sick all the time.
Hmm.
She's like my sister. She's sick all the time. And that was when I was a teenager. I saw my mom one day. She just fell in a tub and broke, had a cut in her head. I had to,
Hmm.
pick her out of the bathtub, and that's how bad she was. So I know that health is more important to me than anything else. And health will, when you're not healthy, it affects your whole family. So that's why it's important to me.
That is so amazing, and I really hope our viewers really take that into account for the relationship. So, what type of challenge would you love to give our viewers before we hop into the next segment?
Well, I guess for a time we kind of compete with each other a bit. I think that happens with every couple, and it might be a challenge for you to actually think about, not just you but viewers, to think about where they are actually seeing your spouse as a competitor, not as an ally or as your spouse. So that would be an area that you might want to consider changing, because you're working together, not competing against each other.
That is true. And there are many times when we competed each other, and people are still doing that.
It never works out well.
it works out well. I love that. I love that. Well, we'll be right back after a short break as we jump into, a little bit more about self-love and the whole theme for February.
Be attentive to what you tune into, attentive to love and curiosity, interest and enthusiasm. Passion is love. And when we talk about love, it's love of self, love of others, love of God, love of the process. Passion is that place, that sweet spot where we are living intentionally, we are living attentively.
What we believe to be true will be true for us, even if it's based on completely incorrect information. And we create our circumstances to support the belief systems that we carry. That might sound like bad news, like you're somehow at fault or to blame for the things about your life that aren't working. But let me share with you why that's not true. I'm Jackie Mott. I've always been fascinated by what makes people tick, and I've been working with people for well over a decade. What I can tell you is that those two statements have proven themselves to be true over and over again. The really great news is that we can change it. If you created your circumstances, you must also have the ability to create something different. You can overcome negative conditioning, self-image, limiting beliefs, and instead create healthy relationships, joy, and fulfillment, and that is my specialty. You can find me at jackiemott.com or on Facebook or YouTube. And if you're ready to start living with confidence, joy, healthy relationships, and excitement about your life and future, send me a message or an email and let's talk about it.
Welcome back to the Chronic Health Collective. I hope everyone's been enjoying our discussion a little bit. We usually don't do that deep dive for people to know a little bit more about us. In the last segment, we talked about the importance of relationships, how to align values. But I don't want people thinking it's all about relationships. I think people need to realize, sometimes we need to love ourselves a little bit too. When it comes to self-love, what does that mean to you, Minna?
So a lot of people think self-love is about like spa day and meditation. It's not really all that. When it's self-love is when you love yourself, you do what is best for you, right? And what we're talking about relationship this month. So me loving you is actually me loving myself, because I want that, right? I want that to happen. And that's why you're in my life. There are other people that choose to be, solo by themselves, and that's perfectly fine, because that's how they love themselves.
Correct.
Right? So that is true self-love, is to do what is best for you, mentally, physically, emotionally. Do what is best for you.
That is amazing, because like a lot of people, when they say self-love, they think that it's being selfish, right? Because a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to be selfish. I'm going to go out with the girls, or I'm going to go out with the guys, and you take care of the kids. Yeah, like you said, that isn't self-love, right?
For sure. And, parents like to say, I do this for you to the kids. they're not really doing that for you, because they're doing that because it makes them feel better. So, as kids, I hear them, hey, I'm doing it for you, I'm sacrificing for you. That's not true at all. They chose to because that makes them feel good. That is their way of loving themselves. Makes them feel like a good
Correct.
parent.
That's so true. Well, as a productivity and time management specialist, how does self-love come into play for that?
So when we're talking about productivity or time management,
Mhm.
there is this belief that you're supposed to be able to use your time more effectively to get more done.
Mhm.
But that's actually the opposite, right? When you're productive, you are actually getting less done, but you're only doing more that is important to you. You're doing what matters,
Mm.
right? You're not spending time scrubbing the floor and washing dishes and doing everything that's not important to you. Go pick up your kids, spend an hour waiting in line to do whatever it is. That's a waste of time, anyways. So
Mhm.
being productive, truly productive, is to only do what matters to you most. To do what you do best and to do what matters to you most,
Mhm.
and the rest of the time you just enjoy it and spend your time recovering from whatever it is that you're tired from, and get a lot of sleep.
It's funny because how you talk about doing less, but doing what's important. Because I always hear about I only need 4 hours of sleep, or I can do all this, and even if it's going to kill me, I'm going to do it. Like, what are your thoughts on that as a productivity management specialist?
So, back in the day when I was in college, I was taking Psych 101, and
Sure.
my professor, he's actually proudly telling the class, I only sleep 2 hours a day. That's all I need. And you know what? He's a
Sure.
pretty shitty professor. So there are studies that comes out that you need at least 7 hours of sleep,
Hmm.
because it slowly gets to you. It's not like you're gonna next day you're gonna die because you don't get enough sleep, but it hits you slowly that you're not gonna feel a sudden change, but your cognitive ability is going to decline, meaning you're not as smart as you should be.
Hmm.
And you might know that too. Like when you don't sleep well, you don't think well. Like you
Correct.
actually muddy, your brain's actually muddy. You don't think well, which means you're not going to do well in whatever your work is going to be. So you're going to actually, a lot of times when you don't sleep well or you don't recover well, and when you're sick, when you do something, even you try to work, you end up having to redo it again, and that is extra not productive.
That is so true because like when you're tired, it's just like even if you're reading a book, I'm so glad I don't need to study anymore. But like when you're reading the book, a lot of times you may be reading that paragraph over and over again because even though you're reading it, you're not understanding what you're reading, right?
For sure. So when you're not focused, when you are, when you don't have the mental ability to actually focus on a book or whatever it is that you're doing, it's best to just take a break, go, take a nap, or work
Hmm.
on something else that would chill you out a little bit and maybe relax your brain a little so that you can go back to it later.
Well, what other um self-love hacks can you do to boost productivity, you think? I think like you said, sleep is so important. You talk a little bit about movement, and do you need to move a lot? You think that's going to help boost productivity, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, you know that I don't move a lot. But I also don't sit at a desk for a long time, right?
Hmm.
We have a standing desk, so I do the stand as sometimes I stand, sometimes I sit. I walk around a lot, and I actually take breaks every 45 minutes or so. I just walk around, leave my desk and go do something else, go feed the cat or
Hmm.
go, bathroom or whatever it is, just go take a little walk. So in
Correct.
that sense, I move around a lot just because I'm not really just staying in one place for a long time. So that is
Hmm.
one thing that I do. The other thing I do is I always start my day the same way.
Mm.
Right? Other than, spending the 5-10 minutes to feed the cats, the kids, because they cry. I always, fit in my make sure I open my brain properly in the morning. I make sure we get our, bulletproof coffee, just because it's a brain power for us. We make sure we do all these routine things in the morning, so that it sets my day up right for the rest of the day.
So routines are sort of important in loving yourself, obviously, to set you up for success. Then, right?
Yeah, I mean, the routine that you have to set for yourself, you want to make sure that it's something that is beneficial for you, right? It's something
Mm-hmm.
that I do what I do in the morning because I feel like that's my way of opening my mind up for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
You work out in the morning because that's what opens you up for the rest of the day. So
Correct.
you kind of have to figure out what works best for you, um, as an individual, what works best for you in the morning. Some people like to meditate in the morning. I don't like
Mm-hmm.
to meditate in the morning because I don't feel I needed it.
Mm-hmm.
My meditation happens usually in the middle of the afternoon. That's when my brain is most tired. I feel like I needed a break. I need to figure out, what what I've been doing for the day, and what my rest of the day should look like. So that's when I meditate. I think you actually have a different routine than me.
Definitely. My meditation's right before I go to sleep. Because I like to try to figure out what are the wins or losses, and most of the time I'm hoping to have more wins, right? You don't try not to concentrate on the losses, but it's true. It's true. For me, moving is so important. But for us, food for fuel is always important. That's high on our list too. So, like you said, the bulletproof coffee and listening to your body, I think that's so important. What you say. Uh, how about productivity hacks? Because I think a lot of people, like I said, we got 24 hours, and out that 24 hours, I'm spending 8 hours at work. Like, what can people do to become high performers?
So high performers, the one thing that they all do is, well, that's two things that they all do. They all sleep a lot,
Okay.
and they say no a lot.
Hmm.
Right? It's like Ron Buffett is famous for saying that, right? He turned down opportunities 99% of the time because
Correct.
that's not what he wants. He's hyper focused on what he is looking for, and that's why he is so successful in what he does. He only does that one thing, right?
Hmm.
And that's what you should do, to just focus on that one thing that you are good at, and that's what you want to do, and
Hmm.
say no to everything else. You have a problem saying no to a lot of opportunities. I'm trying to help you fix that, but it's
Correct.
still it's still a work in progress, and everyone makes that same mistakes. There's a
Correct.
lot of these shiny little objects that comes around, to our lives, and we always say yes to. Hey, that sounds like a good idea.
Correct.
That was a cool thing to do, but a lot of times it's better to just say no if you
Hmm.
want to be productive.
Correct. 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 And I totally agree on that. That is, um, I guess the way I'm brought up. To just say a little bit more about Migo. I can handle that, yeah, or oh, that sounds like that's going to help someone, or oh, that sounds like a great opportunity. But like I said, a lot of these times these things sort of skew from our values, or maybe thinking there's a extra quick step that you can hop to skip, and it's like you said, life is showing that you put in the work. There's no fast track, right? But what are your thoughts about you know the 80-20 rule? Because I want people to really understand what that actually means.
So the 80-20 rule is also called the Pareto principle, right? It's divided
Hmm.
is it came up with this guy called Pareto, I think. And so what it does is you spend 80% of time doing 20% of the outcome, and then it's the other way around. It's almost like it applies to all areas, right? So a lot of times when a company is they saying 20% of your customers gives them 80% of the profits, and so on and so forth. So one of the way to look at the Pareto principle is that you want to spend 20% of your time on doing what is 80% of what's most important to you. And you can, well, actually, stay away. 80% of the time doing what's most important to you, and you can waste do 20% of the time doing, just wasting it on Facebook or Instagram or watching TV or whatever it is. So don't. A lot of people try to strive for perfection, which is 100% of something, and that's not going to happen. Perfection is something that they teach you in school that is just that doesn't exist. It's always constant improvement that is important, right? So something that you think is done perfectly today is 100% today. It's going to be obsolete by tomorrow. So don't ever chase perfection, but always go for good enough and always push yourself to be better the next day.
I love that. I love that. And one last thing before we throw in that quirky question. You mentioned things about routines. How do people set in the routines, right? Because it's like you can't just routines is more structured, right? So how do you structure it? This is something I struggle with, and you're helping me with too. So there's something that you like calling. How do you structure your routines throughout the day to be most productive?
I guess when you're trying to set up a new routine, use reminders. We have iPhones, so I would set reminders on things I want to do that will happen every day at a certain time. And the reminder, you can actually change the name of the reminder to tell you what it is that you want to do. And the phone would, pop up with notification that, you need to do this at this time. And once you do that for about 2 or 3 months, you don't need that anymore. Once you get used to that routine, then you can actually take away the reminder and you just do it naturally.
I love that. I love that. What type of challenge would you love for the listeners to have coming from self-love?
Now I'm not too sure. I know I wrote down something that I wanted to do, and we tried it just earlier, and well, okay. So let's just throw this out.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that you're supposed to kiss your spouse 10 seconds every day, like continuously, right? You do the 10-second thing, and it's even better if you keep your eyes open and look at each other. And
Correct.
we just tried it, and that's not working out very well for us. One, it's hard to keep your eyes open, and two, 10 seconds is a hell of a long time. So maybe start with 3.
I love it. I love it because I was thinking, yeah, I think that's a great, great, great rule. And we always say, we're gonna talk about something or we're gonna give some advice. We need to do what we say. And I said, let's try this 10-second kiss rule. And wow, 10 seconds is a freakishly long time.
It's harder than doing a plank.
Maybe for some people, exactly. Oh my God, that is so great. Well, I hope everyone's got a few things they learned from Minna today for boosting the productivity, and figuring out which areas of your life that you might be neglecting. Maybe it's your relationship, maybe it's your health, or figuring out your balance. And if you're having problems figuring that all out, reach out to Minna. All that contact information's on there, and that QR code, that goes to your calendar, right, Minna?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, so schedule a call with me. I'm probably best with email or Calendly, so just schedule a time with me, because if you're not on my schedule, I don't look at it.
Exactly, exactly. That is so awesome. Well, next week, who do we got next week, Minna?
I think you're up next week. This is your turn for me to grill you.
It is my turn next week. Oh my gosh. Join us here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. CST for more tips to uplevel every aspect of your life and health of course. And if you miss an episode, make sure to catch up anytime at watch.e360tv.com, on the Vitality TV network, and of course, or on our YouTube channel at Chronic Health Collective. Until next time, stay healthy, stay inspired, and always live your chronically healthy life. Goodbye now.
See ya.